Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar. We'll run through the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, as we do have plenty of areas of precipitation pushing in from the west, as we do have a generally quite active jet stream with areas of precipitation, low pressure generally getting chucked towards us. We'll then have a look at the mid to longer ranges as we head towards this weekend. At the end of this sort of 5-day range into sort of the 7 to 10-day range, looks like we're going to be seeing some big amplification of the jet stream, some very interesting sort of blocking patterns in terms of higher pressure moving up towards Iceland and Greenland. Temporarily, it looks like it could actually bring us quite a balmy southerly wind with a lot of heavy rain, and the hints today perhaps towards the end of this sort of mid-range time frame we could actually go very cold. Some of the models today, especially the operational runs, which are high resolution and can sometimes lead the Ensemble members by a few runs. So the Ensemble members may catch up this evening or tomorrow. They are showing some very, very chilly conditions to end October. Very, very interesting patterns that, again, do align, as I've repeatedly said, with what we saw in our first winter look ahead, where the end of autumn, or at least the second half of autumn into early winter, could have a lot of blocking patterns around, potentially giving us some very cold end of autumn and early winter weather. So we'll have to see exactly what's happening. We'll have a look at those operational runs and the ensembles as well to see what they're showing today. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well. The link's in the description. So if you start on the live radar, you can see we do have a weather front that is pushing in from the west. It is petering away though as it does. You can see just areas of patchy precipitation now. Some into the Midlands, northwest England, parts of Wales, into Scotland, and a few areas of patchy rain into central, southern, and eastern England as well. Again, nothing too crazy, but some precipitation that could make you a little bit wet when it does move through. But it should move through quite quickly and is disintegrating as it does. So I'm not expecting too much in terms of widespread precipitation. But again, another generally showery day, but many areas probably will escape the rain entirely and be relatively dry. Not too bad in terms of temperatures either. You can see there, rising potentially to the low into maybe mid-teens, maybe 15, 16 degrees in a few isolated areas, but of course further northwards and westwards, closer to the cooler air masses pushing in from the north and the west, it's going to be slightly colder, more down towards the low teens. But it could turn even milder, perhaps toward the weekend, start of next week, before turning a lot colder, maybe in 7 to 10 days' time. So there's going to be a lot of up and down in temperatures, not only in the upper air temperatures, but surface temperatures as well. And the same goes for precipitation as well. There'll be some dry days, but there could actually be some big washout days as well. Now, if you go over to the UKV and have a look at the precipitation and temperature over the next 5 days, you can see this afternoon that weather front is petering away as it moves eastwards. We do see some more rain potentially reinvigorate overnight tonight in the south. A little bit more heavy rain pulsing there through the south and the east, mainly overnight, so shouldn't impact many people during the day as it does slowly sweep through and into Friday. Bit of precipitation, Scotland, a bit of an occluded front there around a little low pressure system that could give some heavier rain, and then there's a lingering cloud and a few patches of rain in the far southeast corner, but not too bad for Thursday. Another weather front pushes in from the north and west. We see some more heavy bouts of precipitation in the south that could give some heavier rain through Friday, and quite persistent as well, before eventually does clear away. And into Saturday, more bouts of westerly winds, potentially even some wintry showers. Look at those pinks over the Highlands of Scotland, showing quite a cold air mass pushing in. Not cold enough for snow really to anywhere apart from the highest peaks of the mountains in Scotland, but snow nonetheless. And then again, we're just seeing a lot of showers pushing through, maybe heavier bouts at times, but also some drier spells into Sunday. You can see maybe some very heavy rain pushing up through Sunday evening into Monday, and that's when we get that low pressure system spiraling to our south and east because of the blocking up towards the north. You can see high pressure is up towards Greenland. We'll see that better on the GFS in a minute. But you can see this low pressure towards our south and east spiraling in a southerly wind. Upper air temperatures look they're going to get very warm. Look at that, 12 degrees at Angel HPA colliding with -2 or 3 across Scotland. That temperature contrast fueling that very heavy precipitation, and yeah, very potentially unsettled conditions there. But these sort of systems, because of this higher pressure blocking towards Greenland, could become more apparent over the next couple of weeks. Give us very unsettled, rainy conditions. But of course, if this jet stream shifts even further southwards, this much colder rain engulfs the whole of the UK, then it can send things a lot colder widely. Now, if you have a look at the max temperatures over the next 5 days, you can see this afternoon temperatures widely 13 to 16 degrees. Nothing too bad, but this time of year, it's around average. Not particularly warm, but not particularly cold either, really. We do see sunshine, it won't be too bad, but of course with those areas of rain moving in, it may be a little bit more sort of cool and feeling a little bit more miserable. But, as I said, as we saw on the live radar, those rain areas are not too big, so hopefully most areas are not too bad today. Overnight temperatures don't look too bad tonight, especially in the south and east with a bit more cloud, especially with that precipitation moving in. But across Scotland, could drop towards mid to low single digits and into Thursday afternoon. Once again, seeing temperatures rise maybe to 16 or 17, and further northwards back towards mid-single digits across Scotland. So very cold across Scotland, but much milder in the south. It's because we've got these colliding air masses. As we head into Friday, overnight temperatures not dropping down too low, maybe 10 to 12 degrees with more cloud around, and into Friday afternoon you can see very big splits where you have some more precipitation in the south and the east, 13 or 14 degrees, but 16 or 17 in the Midlands where we avoid the thickest cloud and precipitation. Across Scotland, very cold, 3 to 8 degrees for some areas, and yeah, really chilly indeed with cold air masses pushing in from the north. And it's Saturday afternoon, 16 degrees potentially in the south and east, but look at that, maybe only mid to low single digits across parts of Scotland, Northern England and Ireland, Northern Ireland especially, seeing maybe only high single digits. Into the night it will drop very cold, look at that, mid to low single digits across Scotland, and into Sunday afternoon, look at that, 16, 17 degrees in the south, much colder in the north, and that's shown even more on Monday morning. Look at that, close towards freezing across Scotland, but only 15 or 16 degrees across the far south coast, showing those colliding air masses, giving us very big contrasting conditions. Now, if you do have a look at the GFS and see what that is showing over the next couple of weeks, you can see the westerly flow at the moment, but you can see that low pressure dropping to our south, the blocking towards Greenland, shifting that jet stream, and you can see a southerly wind coming in by the end of the week into Sunday and Monday. Initially very mild and very wet, but look at that high pressure built in, still with a southerly wind, but look towards day 10, a northerly wind / northeasterly wind develops, and that's an incredibly cold and would be an incredibly snowy chart if this were in about 6 weeks' time. If we head towards sort of middle to end of November into December, this could be an incredibly cold and snowy chart, especially for the north. Eventually we stay in that very cold northerly airflow, and right towards the end of the run, eventually high pressure does build in, but at least for a good few days there, we do go very cold. Again, if we have a look at the raw upper air temperatures, you can see turning very mild towards Sunday, Monday. Look at that, 10 to maybe even 15 degree air mass, or 10 to 15 degrees at 850 HPA for upper air temperature air mass moving in. But eventually, look at that, much colder polar maritime air mass floods in before eventually it gets toppled away. And you can see this even better by looking at the potential equivalent temperatures. You can see yellows and oranges pushing in, so quite a warm air mass, before eventually look at those darker blues pushing in, that's very cold air. And again, even more emphasis on the temperature deviation compared to average, potentially 10 degrees above average in the far southeast. We run it on another couple hours, another couple days, but another couple of these frames, you can see getting down towards 6 to 8 degrees potentially below average there. So massive temperature swings. So we could go from a southerly, warm, humid, rainy sort of pattern to very cold northerly winds or northeasterly winds come around 10 days time. So very interesting seeing that from the GFS today. If you look at the GEM, see how that does compare with it does pull in that southerly and then a northerly later on. We do see a westerly flow, eventually the low pressure drops to our south, a southerly wind, very mild and warm initially, but then look at that, we do actually see that low pressure drop out from the north. Doesn't go as cold, doesn't go as blocked, so it's not quite as sort of frigid with those cold air masses. But if we do have a look at the upper air temperatures, you'll see it still does go a little bit colder than average. Again, you can see very mild over the next next week or so. But by next Thursday, Friday time, look at that cold air masses flooding in from the north. Again, not incredibly cold, but temperature deviation quite considerably below average. So again, not exact pattern that the GFS was going for, similar, but not exact with those high pressure systems slightly different positioned and differently orientated. But we do see generally a switch from very warm air mass to a very cold air mass in the space of only a couple of days. And not only could that produce a lot of heavy precipitation, but it could produce some very, very stark temperature contrast. One day it could be 17, 18 degrees, and the next day, or day after that, could be 7 or 8. So yeah, could be seeing some very, very interesting conditions next week. So you could be going from potentially even getting shorts out again to maybe getting your winter coats out, hats and gloves out a couple of days later. If you compare that to the ECMWF, so that's showing over the next few days, again, a westerly flow at the moment, southerly wind gets brought up, but eventually, toward day 10, look at that, a northerly wind is plunging in. Again, it's not fully into the UK, but look at that, the -5 isotherm is taking over northern Scotland, the -10 is getting close to northern Isles of Scotland, so yeah, very, very interesting, and there's a massive temperature contrast there, and again, look at the temperature deviation, look, 10 degrees, maybe even 12 degrees across parts of France, the far north of Scotland, northern Isles of Scotland, potentially 12 degrees below average, so 20 to 25 degree temperature contrast could be seen there across from the north of Scotland to the north of France, so incredibly strong temperature contrast there, and it could fuel some very heavy precipitation along that boundary, and could provide some very, very interesting conditions when that cold front does sweep through, because it would be an incredibly strong cold front with a lot of heavy rain along it, gusty winds, things like that. But it is something to keep an eye on, and of course the temperature change will be very big as well. But yeah, very, very interesting seeing this. Again, it's the time of year where it's possible, because we have very warm air masses still to our south, but very cold air masses generating to our north. So it is very, very possible, and you could say even likely, that we do see these sort of temperature clashes. But very interesting seeing the flip-flop this quickly in that sort of 7 to 10 day time frame. If you finish the video though by having a look at the ensembles, look at the GFS, you can see it is very difficult to read that off these ensemble charts, because it's around average over the next 5 days before turning above average, and that's where we see that southerly wind, but you can see quite a bit of precipitation because we have heavier rain pushing in from the south. Beyond that though, we have massive, massive spread, some saying between 10 and 15 degrees at 850 HPA, others dropping down to -5 or lower at 850 HPA. The average, or the mean of the ensemble members, is around the 1981-2010 mean. So yeah, massive, massive spread from around the 20th, 22nd of October onwards. So sort of that 7 to 10 day time frame is where we have the big uncertainty. But yeah, could be seeing a very cold northerly wind to end the month, but equally could see a very warm, I won't say hot, but very humid tropical sort of southerly wind in the middle of the month. So yeah, very, very big changes could be coming. But again, look at the spread of the ensemble members. You can see nothing is particularly sort of concrete yet. Even the warmer southerly winds, you can see some members are not going for it, some of them are only going for it moderately, and a few, including the operational run, the control run, and a few odd ensemble members are getting incredibly warm towards conditions that could, if we see dry weather, get us towards 25 degrees. Now if you compare it to the ECMWF ensemble members, again, very similar, perhaps a bit more bullish with that warmer weather towards the middle of the month. But the next 5 days around average, and then pulling well above average towards the sort of 17th, 18th of October, continuing well above average around the 20th to 22nd before we do see a big drop back towards average, and there are a considerable number who are well below average. Again, it's something to keep an eye on, not guaranteed, but at this stage, yeah, very, very interesting seeing what's going on. Quite a considerable precipitation signal though, very constant throughout this second half of the month. So regardless of the upper air temperatures and the sort of temperatures of the surface, it does look likely there will be the possibility of rain at all times. Of course, that is pretty bang on when we have the high pressure blocking elsewhere. It is forcing the cooler, more unsettled, lower pressure air masses and low pressure systems towards us. So it is always likely we're going to be seeing higher precipitation, or at least some precipitation, regardless of the air mass. But yeah, very interesting conditions. This would be even more interesting if we saw this in a month's time. If this was sort of the middle to end of November, there would be a possibility to see some significant snow with this sort of pattern. But we are, as I said, 4 to 6 weeks too early to be seeing anything like that. This would be a very, very interesting sort of ensemble member charts and operational runs to be seeing if this were in a winter month. But unfortunately, it's in October. So even though, yeah, it is still very interesting seeing this synoptically, it's not going to give us anything too extreme, because some maybe slightly warmer than average weather and then colder than average weather, but the colder than average weather isn't incredibly cold, and the warmer than average weather is not going to be incredibly warm either. It's that time of year where very high above average is like 20 degrees, and very cold below average is like 7 or 8 degrees. So it's not a particularly big contrast to what we could get in the peak months, but it is still very interesting seeing this synoptically, and it could again give us some very, very stark contrasts in the coming weeks. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.